I'm gonna move my player down here, and I'm gonna throw an enemy in here, because eventually I'm gonna want to hit the enemy with a missile. But for right now, if I shoot a missile, it's just going to go straight through the enemy. I have to make a collision of those two objects together. And when those two collide, I want the enemy to disappear in the missile. So I'm going to add a new event. And in that condition, I'm going to say when the missile collides with and collision with the enemy, or the spider, I want to delete an object right there, and then I'm going to do this again, but I'm going to copy and paste this in, and I'm going to choose spider. So now when the missile is in collision with the spider and the missile, they delete. Okay, at this point I'm going to save, just because I want to be saving a lot, and I'm going to test that. Now I can run my player over here, and I can make a shot, and boom, enemy and missile disappear. So one of the things that's kind of boring right now is the spider doesn't move, and technically we want him to move back and forth on the screen. We're going to add another new event, and we're going to put in at the beginning of the scene. At the beginning of the scene, we want to add a force to the spider to get it to move across the screen. And then we're going to add another condition that when it hits the end of the screen, it will change the direction of the force, so it'll go the other way and it'll bounce back and forth. So I'm going to add a new event, and I'm going to choose a condition at the beginning of the scene. And then I'm going to click on the spider, and I'm going to add a force, and I want it to go in the X direction. So I'm going to put 200 on here with 0 speed, and it's going to be a permanent force. So now when the game starts, it's going to start moving this way. However, I want to put in a point that when the spider collides with the wall, we're going to do some math that will make the force opposite and go the other direction. Okay, and so I'm going to add a new condition here of when spider collides with, so in collision with the wall, I am going to change the force on the spider. So I'm going to click spider, and then I'm going to add a force, and it's definitely in the X direction, and I need it to go in the opposite direction. And so I can do some interestingly fun math here. So instead of just saying when it collides on the wall, just change the speed, because then when it comes to the other wall, I have to get the opposite, because I get a positive force moves from left to right, but once I hit that right wall, I need a negative force to move it back. Okay, and so we can do some math on here to simulate that. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I want, when it collides with the wall, I want it to go grab the current on the spider. So I can go into my math creation here, and I can grab average X coordinate of forces of the spider. And so it's going to go grab the current force on the spider. So we're going to use that. So right now it's at negative 200. So we're adding to the force here. So we're going to multiply this times a negative 2. Okay. So we're going to take the 200. We're going to multiply it by a negative 2, which is going to be make negative 400. So now we have negative 400, and then it's adding a negative 400 to the current force. So a negative 400 plus 200 equals a negative 200. Now we have a negative force of 200, and it's going to move in the opposite direction. And this is going to be a permanent force. Okay. Now once we do that, we will notice that the ship is going to jump back and forth on the screen. So the force in the X direction equals 200, right? So this is the current force that's going on. And then what we're saying here is when we select add a force, we're going to add something to this 200. And so what we did was we said, well, go and get force X of the spider, which is 200. And then we're going to multiply this times a -2. Okay? So when we just do this portion, the force that we want, this equals a -400. And what we're saying is we want to take this 400 and add it to the current force. So then the new force X equals 200 plus a -400 or -200. So now the next thing we want to do is when spacebar is released, we also want to do a missile sound. So we can add another action in here, and we're gonna click on other actions and go to audio, and we're gonna play a sound. And we can choose one from the audio library. Technically, we could have, if we were using the desktop version, create our own sounds, and I will lead you through something later if I haven't already to show you how to create those sounds. But we're just going to choose one from the audio library, and if you click on all assets, all 6 or 7 sounds show up, and I can choose one from there, and I can also see what the sound sounds like by hitting play. Okay, so now if I hit OK, play, and you may or may not be able to hear this because I don't actually have sounds enabled on my computer, but you should hear every time I hit the space bar a sound. That's how you could add a simple sound to this. You could also add background music, but GDevelop has a little caveat to background music. In order for background music to be enabled, you actually have to have a key press or button happen first. In GDevelop, you would have to have a start screen, and then once you hit start, that's when the background music could play. Or as soon as you hit play to move an enemy, then maybe you have the background music start playing then. So as long as you know that there's some, there's a caveat there to playing background music, okay? And now you have a basic space shooting game that can play sounds, is animated.